Show business is kind of like the internet. It's only dangerous if you take it seriously. Aviation is only dangerous if you don't take it seriously. My whole career, I've been lying about my ability. When I was a kid, if someone says, now this is a part in this movie, it requires you to be able to ride a horse. Can you ride a horse? I'd be like, absolutely, I can ride a horse. No fucking way, I know it. But with aviation, if someone says, do you know how to do this? And you say yes, and you don't know how to do it, you'll kill everybody.
Aviators, welcome to the Flight Club podcast. I'm your host, Jason Middleton. I'm a pilot, I'm an aviation entrepreneur, and I'm a huge fan of the people that make up our diverse aviation community. Today's guest on Flight Club is a multifaceted entertainer and one of the hardest working guys I know. He started his aviation career in Van Nuys, California, flying a Cessna 182 all around Southern California. Now, he's flying his RV-6 around the coast and highlands of Scotland. He's starred in multiple TV shows and movies. He's written multiple books, including American on Purpose, which made the New York Times bestseller list. He was a very successful host of The Late Late Show. He's the host of the popular Joy podcast. He's one of the funniest comedians on the planet. You can find him on tour right now in the US and Canada with his Fancy Rascal tour. And I'm quite certain he's the only guest we'll ever have on Flight Club that's actually flown a Dragon. Aviators, welcome Craig Ferguson to Flight Club.
Have you started?
We're started.
Have you started right now?
We're going.
All right.
It's on.
So are you like, you say aviators welcome? Is that
Aviators welcome.
Aviators assemble.
Yes,
like you're
go.
Bringing your dragons
Get in the plane.
Yeah, that's get in the plane. All right. We'll talk about it. A few bumps on the way up. It'll be fine. It's fine. Aviators assemble. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, God. So, all right. First, I just want to start out with a few disclosures here. When I was kind of going after you a little hard on text, and I apologize for that to get you on the podcast. But then you actually said yes. And then I realized I have to interview Craig Ferguson.
Yeah.
Who's like, to me, this is like going surfing with Laird Hamilton.
Well, also not really. First of all, there's a couple of things. One, I've known you for a long time. And secondly, there's been a lot of times in airplanes when I've said, what's that? Why are we doing this? What's that noise? Why is that light on? Why is that other light on? Why are we landing now? Where are we going? Should we really be flying into that? I've done all of that with you. So
do you I was going to say these stories later, but do you remember we were flying back from the Bahamas one time?
I'll never forget it.
And we had a CAS message pop onto the avionics.
Fuel cell light.
Yeah, you're like, what's that? I'm like, don't worry about it. Unless, it's not a problem unless the other one goes off. Literally, the voice, it came out of my, bing. I'm like, oh, God, here we go.
I remember that because we were coming back from the Bahamas, and we had gone there. Megan was pregnant with Liam.
Yeah.
We were on the way back, and my pregnant wife was in the back, and there was a line of thunderstorms ahead, and 2 fuel cell lights had gone on in a 25-year-old airplane that we had been, and I had landed it pretty roughly a couple of times as well. And
we'd been running it pretty hard. That's true.
Ooh, that was a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And then, you know what? I don't know if I told you this, because remember we landed in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Yep.
And then they drained the engines, and we thought it was going to be okay. Mm-hmm. We stayed overnight. We got back in the plane.
Had some good Southern food.
Right. We had some Southern food. We get back in the plane the next morning, like at sunup, to head, because I'm going back to do the late night show. And we take off from Biloxi, Mississippi, and the fucking fuel light went on again.
I know.
And then we had to land at Love Field in Dallas.
Yep.
Right. And I was still rushing back to get the late night show.
You had to shoot like that day.
Right. So we get to Love Field in Dallas. I make a phone call across the other side of the airplane, and somebody says, we've got a Lear 60. We'll take you to Van Nuys in a Lear 60. I'm like, okay. So,
slightly better than the plane we were in.
Well, yeah, it was better. So we go, but that was when Lear 60s, like, they had that horrible accident with the nose wheel or something. Like,
yeah, the brake.
it was the tire.
Failed.
The tire had failed or something. So I remember we took off in the Lear 60. We were going to land at Santa Monica so that I could get there. And as we're coming in at Santa Monica has the VOR at the other end of the runway. So the glide slope is weird on Santa Monica.
There's no glide slope.
There's no glide slope.
It's a VOR.
It's like, well, there's a VOR, but when you come in, it's weird, and you're looking, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh my God. And so we did did a missed approach Santa Monica and landed in Van Nuys. It was the most harrowing.
I know.
It was.
I mean, I don't know if people know about your aviation background. You've done a lot of flying personally, and airplanes on tours, and when I met you, I think we met, over 20 years ago.
Right.
You were just starting your TV show, the Late Late Show, and you were touring.
And you were starting. You were flying a Pilatus for someone else.
I was flying a Pilatus, yeah.
Or was it a King Air?
I was both. I was doing both. I think the first time I met you were flying a PC-12 from Burbank or something to. Yeah, it was a great.
That's a great airplane.
It was awesome. I love that plane. It's my favorite airplane.
You know what? If I was going to buy an airplane now, it'd be a PC. I would never buy an airplane again. But if I was going to buy one, I'd be a PC-12.
Well, you own an airplane right now.
I do. I'm part owner of but it's a little RV6.
That's a pretty cool airplane.
It's a very cool airplane.
You sent me when you moved back to Scotland for a while. You took a little break from showbiz and you bought this beautiful little farm, which I had the opportunity to visit. And you hosted my son there too last summer. But you sent me this picture and a couple of videos of you flying an RV6 with a bunch of buddies around the coast and Highlands of Scotland.
Yeah, well, and it's who it is the who I own the plane with is two real aviators. I mean, I'm a tourist, but the real aviators, Adam Ferguson, who is my neighbor there, and Adam is he was for a while. He flew the airlines for a while, but he was 20 years in the British Army. Helicopter display team. He was, flying helicopters upside down for the army. He flew in. I mean, he's a proper aviator, and he's an airstrip on his property. Yeah, like a grass strip on his property, and he was flying the RV because all his buddies from the forces, they have these fly-ins, so they all come in these There's a guy with the pits. There's a guy with. There's a whole lot of airplanes. Yeah, the ones that go boom, 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 in the black and white films.
I mean, it is Scotland after all, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic though. I mean, the VFR flying in Scotland, I've never seen anything like it. Maybe the Pacific Northwest on a good day, it's kind of the same. Yeah. Where you can really drop down and just it's crazy.
And you guys flew. I mean, a lot. You sent me a video. It gave me, when you have a Joy podcast, it gave me so much joy to see the video of you flying in formation with a bunch of other guys, and it looked just awesome.
Yeah, I was, that day though, that video I sent you, I was sitting there going, "Oh, this is Freddie." I wasn't flying anything. I was like, "This is awesome. I love this." But that's, or I was saying, "What's that? What's that? What's that?"
Yeah, why is that light on?
Yeah, but I've been doing it for a long time.
I love it. And so you learned to fly a long time ago, and what brought you there? I mean, I
didn't like flying. I was frightened of flying. It terrified me. Yeah. I didn't like it at all. And what happened was I wrote a book. I wrote a novel years ago, and I had
Between the Bridge and the River.
Right, that.
Yeah.
And in that, it was just like a kind of book, and I wrote it. And when Kurt Russell was on the show, now Kurt was on the Late Night Show, and he was on as a guest. He was promoting something, and he was talking about flying, because really what he is an aviator. That's all he cares about. You know, I mean, he loves his kids and Goldie and stuff.
He's a big time.
He's a proper aviator, and he was on, and I had started this. I was talking about aviation because you want to talk about something that somebody is into, and so I was talking about aviation, and I said, I'm frightened of it. And he said, you're not frightened of flying. I went, you don't even know me. And he said, I just come from jury duty, and I was reading your book. He had been reading the novel. And I was like, totally distracted. I was like, Kurt Russell's reading my book. I was like, that's awesome. And he said, no, you're not frightened of flying. You're just a fucking control freak. Yeah. And I'm like, well, no. And he went, no, really, that's the thing. And so... And it was debilitating. It was like getting in the way of this fear of flying. I didn't like it because I have to fly a lot. And he said, no, you got to learn to fly. And I had a couple of conversations with him, and then he talked to Megan, my wife, and they put together for my birthday some flying lessons in Van Nuys.
Yep.
There was a little flight school there, and
that was cool.
I started taking lessons in this little 172 N19 Sierra Papa.
Oh God, you got a good memory.
Yeah,
That's
but it's my first solo airplane. You know,
I was going to ask about the solo. Ask about the solo. We'll get to
that. So I started in this little 172, and I was terrified, but it kind of, I don't know what it is, terrified, but I kept going back.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm scared, but I kept going back. It's a little like stand-up.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you do stand-up and you're like, this is horrible. I kind of want to do it again. And I did it, and it kind of got under my skin a little bit. And that's how I got into it. So Kurt got me into flying just by recognizing, I think, what he saw is, no, you're not frightened of it. You just don't know enough about it. And you don't like handing the controls to someone else. And I still don't.
And I think that's it. I mean, I tell a lot of my friends the same thing. If you have a fear of flying, it's not really you're scared of flying. You're afraid of what you don't know.
Well,
you know?
a lot of it, I think, is that there's a great guy, a guy called Tom Bunn, who does that. Do you know who Tom Bunn is?
I don't know Tom.
Tom Bunn is, he does this SOAR, S-O-A-R. He's a former fighter pilot, and then he flew the airlines for years. And when he retired, he became some kind of therapist. I mean, he's a very, very accomplished guy. And he went deep into the fear of flying because he thinks I can't summarize it, but if people are afraid of flying, it's an amazing podcast because what he does is he goes to the emotional root of a fear of flying.
Interesting.
So it's partly what you say, not knowing enough about it, but there's also there's all sorts of childhood stuff and you know, unable to process. It's to do with executive function and the amygdala glands, and I mean, it's it's high functioning stuff, but he's amazing at it, and I think he has a cure for nervous flyers.
Interesting. Okay,
and it's amazing.
I'll have to have Tom Bunn on the podcast.
If you've got a nervous flyer, if you're dealing with a nervous flyer, throw them to this guy. Okay. It's an app, SOAR. It's amazing.
All right,
it's amazing. It really works for people.
I'm gonna check. Well, it's interesting you brought up like the stand up, the fear, like being on stage. Like I always feel like there's and I've known you for a long time, and I've watched you, you know, in aviation. I've watched you do stand up. I've watched you do all this stuff, and once you walk out onto a stage and you have an audience in front of you and you've got to perform, I feel like it's very similar to I'm just taking off in the fog and weather, and once this airplane's in the air, we're going to land it at some point down the future.
We got to do
right?
it. So, now we've started. You know, we're up. You know,
if you're on stage, you got to land the show.
I think also the thing is about it is that I could see similarities in what I was doing with it just because of the as I was learning to fly, you know, and you learn to fly in conditions which you're qualified to fly in, and sometimes it's a no-fly situation, and sometimes it's a no-stand-up situation where you go, you know what, this isn't going to work. You know, that's not going to go there, and if you do that, that's not going to happen. And sometimes you just don't.
Yeah.
And what I loved about the analogy of putting it together with stand-up was amazing, was the fact that stand-up is kind of subjective, right? But flying is not. Flying is not subjective. It's not like, I don't think that was a very nice flight. Well, we're here.
We're here. We landed.
We landed.
It's all about the landing.
The plane's fine. Right? We're fine. I don't know what you're talking about. And I kind of, I like the kind of discipline of that. It's a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, you did say in an interview, you probably don't remember the interview, but you did say in a long time ago in an interview that I think somebody was interviewing you actually about aviation when you first got your private, and you said, I love aviation because it's totally different than entertainment. But I always felt like there was a lot of, like with you and your knowing your mindset, you took a lot of those things into aviation with you.
Well, I think every pilot you take yourself into the cockpit, right? I mean, you are who you are. I mean, that's why they got all that stuff about, you know, don't fly, you know.
I am safe.
I
am safe.
Yeah, that, and also that whole kind of thing about, you know, you got to check yourself a little bit. I mean, the idea of checklists when you put it into your life outside of aviation, it makes a lot of sense as well. Did I do this? Did I do that? Did I do the thing?
Yeah.
Did I do the thing? Did I do the thing? Because if you, like, even now, when you get into a car now, all the like modern cars have stolen all this technology from aviation, right? So you go in and you go, and then go, and then you scan.
And cars have autopilots now.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, I just got an electric car with an autopilot. It's crazy.
It is weird. I just actually filmed one of those driverless taxis.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I was FaceTiming with Megan. She's in Scotland, and I went, "Oh my God, there's one of them!" And it's like goes by, and there's nobody driving.
Nobody driving.
Yeah,
somebody's in the back.
Yeah, I think there's some old fat guy having a pee in the bathroom. It's just like a plane. It's like there's a pilot in the bathroom, but everything's fine.
God, oh God. Well, okay, so this is an aviation podcast, and
Sure.
I want to try and keep us on aviation.
All right.
Your first solo, you were in Van Nuys.
Yep.
I want to that's a huge moment, and all of as pilots, that's like one of our biggest moments.
Yeah, that's great.
In aviation. Can you walk me through that?
Yeah, I tell you what happened, because I had been doing lessons. I was working with an instructor at Van Nuys, a guy called Manuel Castro. You remember Manuel?
I remember Manuel, awesome guy. Yeah.
He's a lovely guy, and he's a young guy, and he was teaching me how to fly, and he was great. And I was just going there. I was regular. I don't know how many hours I had. It wasn't disgraceful, but it was like 30, 35 hours. I had been doing it a while.
You're a busy guy. You had a lot going on.
Right, so I was like, I get to the airport one day. It was a beautiful day. It was a bit of a wind out of the north, so I kind of knew that. So enough that, Van Nuys is usually 1.6, but it was 3.4. So I went, okay, so 3.4 this day. That's fine. Okay. But if you know anything about Van Nuys and Santa Monica, and
you get a lot of wind shear on when you're running 3.4. Yep.
So the wind's a little bit coming out of 3.4. And I get there, and I remember I was pissed because I was wearing my favorite shirt.
Oh, I see where this is going.
It's like, yes. You know what's going to happen. So I'm wearing my favorite shirt. I'm like, I like this shirt. So, and I get there, and he goes, "Today's the day." And I went, "What do you mean today's the day?" He says, "You ready?" And I went, "Okay." So we go out, we taxi out, and we talk through it. And I'm just going to go up and do 3 in the pattern and all that kind of stuff. And
so you were with Manuel, and you guys did the laps, and then
we did a couple. And he went, "Okay, I'm going to step out, and it's time for you to do it." And I went, "Okay." So I get there, and it's a 719 Sierra Papa, right? And you take off with a 172. I think you get I think it's 10 degrees or 20 degrees of flaps, and I can't remember what it is. You got flaps in anyway. It's like something maybe like 10, that. Something like that.
I can't. Yeah, it's been a while.
Or maybe no flaps at all.
I think
can't
you can
remember.
do whatever you want.
Well, here's what I did though, because I did my first one, and it went great. I was like, so I go up, and you're in an airplane on your own for the first time. And it's a little bumpy because it's, it's coming out of the north, but it's all right. And I'm staying on the radio, and the tower in Van Nuys are great because they see a lot of student pilots. So they're cool with it, and everybody's kind of like, what you go around. And I do the first one, and it's 30 degrees of flaps in for landing. But I don't have a radio in the plane. Manuel's sitting in the bench.
Yeah,
right?
The bench there in Van Nuys.
The bench of Van Nuys. He's watching me.
We call it the soccer moms.
Right. So
watching the students.
He's soccer mom. And I land the plane, and he's like, and I'm like that. And so I taxi around, but I forget to clean up the airplane properly. So the flaps are still in at 30 degrees, right? So I go past him, and he sees the flap. I'm taxiing back to take off again. And he sees the flaps are in, and he goes like that. He goes like, the flaps are in. And I thought he was waving, so I went like that. And then I go back around, and I start off, and the flaps are still in, and I gun this thing, and it's and I'm like, oh, and I got him up, and I managed to kangaroo the thing before I took off on the. So and then I went up for the side. So I did my 3 and got it done. And it's a great day. And then they ruined my shirt because, as you know, you cut the back off the shirt and you're right. And so
and you didn't know that was happening. The shirt.
I didn't know. Well, I didn't know it was happening that day. I had seen shirts up in the flight school, and I was like, what's this about?
What's that?
But and I've still got it. I've still got it framed and. But it was it's a great day. It's a hell of a thing because now you're a pilot. You can fly an airplane on your own.
My first solo was at Van Nuys as well.
Was it really?
Same thing.
I
So I did all my training over in Santa Monica.
Right.
And then, Santa Monica wasn't the best airport to solo because there's just so much going on over there.
It's not the best airport, to be honest. I mean, it looks pretty, but it's scary.
I know. I love it. It's a good place to learn, but and my instructor took me over to Van Nuys, and it was the same thing. He dropped it on me just like that. He's like, "All right, pull over here to the bench," and he jumped out, and good luck. And the feeling of you take off and you look over, and it dawns on you, I now have to land this airplane by myself.
You got to get it down. Yeah, it's a little bit of a worry. I remember. Roundabout, it was either the first solo or very close to the first solo. It was like in the first 2 or 3 times I'd gone up on my own that I suddenly got a crosswind in Van Nuys I hadn't dealt with before. And it got to, now in a 172, look, I've seen you landing crosswinds. It's like we have no business landing at all. But this was a 172.
We got to get to the gig, Craig.
Yeah, but there wasn't much of a crosswind, but it was enough. It was a fairly steady, like 9.5, 10 knot crosswind. It's not much, but in a 172 when you're a new
high
pilot,
wing and
and I was like, and I got it. It was one of the proudest moments of my life because I brought it in. I know how to do it, but I'm still nervous. And I brought it in, and I fucking buttered it, man. It was awesome. I was like, got it in, and the tower came on and said, "Nice job, nice job," and I was like, "That's great." And so I went up and round again. Yeah. And then as I was coming in, I said, "You know what? Can I take 1/6 right? Because there's a crosswind. 1/6 left is shorter.
Yep.
1/6 right's big, long one. So there's a crosswind, and I want to be a little careful." And he said, "Yeah, there's nobody coming. Take 1/6 right." Yes. So I coming in at 1/6 right, and I land it. And then I forget. Then I land it again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I go up and down again.
Well, you have a long run.
And I gun it and I go up again.
Go around.
No, I had to go around.
That's
on
1/6
right.
What a great decision.
Well, it's never the wrong decision.
It's always the right decision.
Always the right decision. So I gun it and I go up and the same guy on the tower said, "So how many landings are you going to do on 1/6 right today?" Man,
really?
How quickly you forget,
What about the last lap?
Yeah, that last one was good. But
they're up there with like scorecards.
Yeah,
you just got a 10.
But I kind of liked it because you kind of felt, particularly, I don't know if you felt this way, but Van Nuys, I felt like they were kind of adults keeping an eye on me a lot of the time. I felt like that in the tower. I felt there was a lot of older aviators around who would if they saw something, they would say something.
Yes.
And I kind of loved that. I loved the feeling of that.
I think you're 100% right. They had Santa Monica was a training tower. So I think they wanted us to kind of go over to Van Nuys with the more experienced mentor.
Well, Van Nuys, there's that great. Did you see that documentary 1/6 right about Van Nuys? I love that thing.
Such a great,
beautiful, and such a
beautiful
that
movie.
Old Piper, that Piper Cub. They got that yellow Piper Cub. They got. I need to get one of those. If I'm going to buy an airplane, it's not a PC-12. It's a Piper. PC-12 and a Piper Cup.
I could see it. Well, you're touring again now, so that PC-12 could come in handy.
You can't tour in a Piper. That's not, unless you're like doing the neighborhood. I don't think so.
Really short, like we could either drive or take the Cub. Oh my God, that's so fun. We had a lot of flying stories. It's funny, when I first started my company, you were touring hard. And it was a really interesting...
You had one airplane as well. You had that little silver bullet, we used to call it.
Yeah, we had one airplane.
Citation jet, right?
It was a CJ, CJ. We had one airplane, and you happened to be touring really hard at that time in your life. I happened to be starting a company at the worst possible time you could ever, 2008, 2009.
Yeah, it was rough.
And luckily for me, you were touring like a madman.
Well, I was only touring to keep you in business because I felt sorry for you. You were like, hey, can you go on tour? I'm like, not really.
Craig, I booked you on some gigs.
Yeah, we need Canada in here.
How do you feel about, do you speak Spanish, Craig?
Yeah, really.
I have a South America tour book for you. Oh God. I remember the trip that Megan was with us. I think we had some other people on the airplane, but we were flying out to Nassau, and we were coming into, I've seen you, actually, I wanted to back this up. I've seen you get upset twice. And all the times I've known you. One, you were playing a show in Vegas, and there was some like people being disrespectful in the audience, and you were having a night, and you normally don't do this, but you kind of got pissed off at them, and
Did I go with him?
Did a little. He had a little go at him. It was like, I'm like that.
It must have been before smartphones. That would be everywhere.
Yeah. But the second time I ever saw you get kind of upset with somebody was we were flying an approach into Nassau, Bahamas.
The air traffic controller?
Yeah,
what a dick. That guy was a dick. I'm still angry at that.
Like,
he was a dick.
There was some accent things going on. Like
he had an accent. And he said he couldn't understand my accent.
Yeah.
I was like, what about your accent?
He was kind of giving you a hard time for your Scottish accent. I think he was normal. He was used to American pilots that, we didn't have.
But to be fair, he wasn't a Bahamian. His accent, he was Indian.
Oh, God.
And I was Scottish. And the two of us
you were like literally having an argument.
We were having an argument, yeah.
And we had been cleared to land for like 5 minutes, and I'm just watching this go down.
I don't even know we were cleared for landing because I was like too busy arguing with this guy.
And I was having
Which I don't even remember what it was about. He started on me with like, I can't understand what you're saying. And I'm like, oh, really? Because I feel like, and then I can't. It had been a long flight.
Oh, God, it was good. I was just like, this is the best. This is the.
Do you know what I remember at 2008 is that we were doing Canada. We were up in Edmonton, Canada, and we were in that Citation jet, the little silver bullet, and I was like, you were the only guy in your company. You were the pilot. You were the dispatcher. You were everybody. You were alarmingly, you were also the flight attendant. But I remember in Edmonton, Canada, it was like a deep freeze, like a really deep freeze. And I didn't talk to you in the morning. You had gone out earlier. Me and the support act and whoever else was working. Yeah. We come out to the airport and I caught you de-icing the plane with a hairdryer. It was like a long cord and a hairdryer, and you were like, eh. It's like, yeah, it'll be fine. I'm like, will it though? I don't know.
Well, to be fair, so we landed in Edmonton. I remember this trip.
Yeah.
We were going from Edmonton, I think, over to Vancouver, but we landed in Edmonton. It was a beautiful, clear day when we landed, and like, I'm like, I'll leave the airplane on the ramp, no problem, it's clear. Well, that night I'm looking out of the hotel room and it's foggy.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, fog, whatever, no big deal. I live in Southern California. It's gonna be a little damp.
Fog's just fog.
Yeah. But apparently at that northern latitude, when fog forms, there's this thing called freezing fog. Mm-hmm. And it not only freezes to the upper surfaces, but the lower surfaces, the landing gear, the doors.
It goes everywhere.
It's everywhere, and it forms this thick layer of clear ice. And I got out to the airplane that morning, and it was literally an ice cube.
Yeah.
And the ramp guy's looking at me. He's like, "Yeah, that happens all the time." I'm like, "Fuck!
So why didn't you put it in the hangar? Put it in a hangar. What's wrong with you?" But, well, there you go.
So yeah, you guys had to sit there. I remember you guys sitting on your suitcases in the hangar while I'm trying to de-ice the airplane.
Glamour of show business. You know what I loved about touring like that though is that you see the world in a way like when you're doing the airlines. I mean, because I kind of tour. Either you get a plane or you're with the airlines, but and I like the airlines because they work most of the time. But flying like that was more exotic. You get to see more exotic airports, and it's kind of cool. Well, it made it more of an adventure. When I was learning to fly, did I ever tell you this? What I used to do. I think this is like, I don't know where you were at this point. This is around about 2008. I just learned to fly, or I was still learning. I'd soloed out, and I used to fly airports on the airlines, and then I would call a flight school to try and get a 172 and an instructor locally. So I remember I was playing a place called Bowler, Wisconsin. Yeah. So I thought, well, I'll fly out to Minneapolis. And then I'll call a flight school on the other side of the airport, and I got some guy on the other side of the airport, and we get this old thing. It was my first cross country.
Oh, nice.
And I planned it all out, and I got my little map.
Did your VFR chart?
Before these, I did my little, I got my little X's, my, Lindbergh fucking pencil lines and stuff. I was all like,
your flat really top chart?
Yeah, all that. And it was still the the charts that are all made on that really cheap toilet paper stuff that used to blow everywhere and stuff. And I get there, and this guy says, "You got your cross," because I told him it was my cross country, and he was like, "Okay, let me see it." And he looked at it and went, "That's great." I got all my little landmarks going, and it was Bowler. We were flying to Bowler, Wisconsin.
You were coming out of Bowler.
No, we're flying to Bowler from Minneapolis. I don't know. It's like an hour flight, and a 172. Yeah. And He said, okay, and it was January, I think, January or February, and we get up, and they go, okay, start using your visual reference points. And the whole place is covered in snow.
White.
There's nothing. There's nothing. I was like,
roads,
I have no idea where I am. He went, yeah, everybody does that. I was like, oh, okay.
He's like,
and then
gotcha.
he said, what you can see is, he said, what you got in there is the railway line. You see and I could see the railway line, and suddenly we go on. But it's you know what? It's a good lesson.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like you don't local knowledge.
Yeah.
Is always good.
100%.
And so like the guys in Edmonton that could have said,
Yeah.
that fog tonight, you might want to put that in a hanger.
Put it in the hanger.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that was hilarious.
Or just the idea of someone more experienced in the cockpit, which I'm always into.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, it's funny. I started flying again recently. I hadn't flown in. I haven't really flown a jet in probably almost 5 years.
Well, let me give you 6 months before you and I go up.
I know. Well, but I took a very mindful approach. I went back to training. I went and got in the simulator, did all the instruction. But now I'm like jumping back into the cockpit. I've got 2,500 hours in the airplane, the G550s, but I haven't flown them in 5 years. So I've been flying with really experienced captains, and I love it.
Oh, it's great.
It's so great.
Also, the way of being able to, the good thing is when you go up to the cruise and then you go up 4 hours of just telling lies.
That's true. It's like therapy.
I really enjoy it.
Let's have a therapy session, Captain.
Do you remember a time? There was a time we were up in. I remember we were in the Citation jet. It was just you and me, and we were at 40,000 feet up at Toronto. It was up in some kind of. It was a really clear night, and we didn't know at the time, but it was just you and I. We were just talking bullshit. And this light goes like right over. We're at 40,000, and this thing just went right over. And I remember going, "What the fuck was that?" And you were like, "I don't know." And I was like, "You want to call it in?" And you're like, "No, fucking." Yeah, no. And I'm like, "I'm not fucking calling it." And then we figured out later it was the space station.
It was the International Space Station.
International Space Station. But like for a minute there, I was like, "Oh."
Well, I remember that night. It was a fucking beautiful night.
Oh, it was amazing.
Calm.
Yeah.
It was one of those flights that there was snow on the ground, crystal clear night.
Yeah, it was crazy.
The stars are gorgeous, and it was quiet. You and I were kind of tired. We weren't really talking.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this thing flies over us, and I saw it, and I'm like, I'm pretty tired right now. I don't want Craig to know I'm really tired, so I'm just not going to say anything about it. And I think you're like, did you see that? I'm like, I did.
Yeah.
Like, what was that?
Yeah, that was a little tricky. But
oh, God,
it's kind of like, but I remember when I found out it was the space station, I was a little disappointed as well, to be honest.
I know.
I wanted it to be aliens.
I know, I did too. I really thought it was. My dad was really into aliens at the time.
Right.
Back then, he was one of those guys, and I was going to tell him the story, and he was,
I should have just told him.
I should have just told him.
I saw it. I don't know what it was.
I don't know what it was, Dad.
Yeah.
It just flew over her head. Craig saw it too, so he can confirm.
Yeah,
he can collaborate.
I saw it too. Do you know, I tell you a horrible thing that happened to me? That I was watching a documentary on, I don't know if it was Netflix, some streaming thing, and it was about people that had seen UFOs, and and they were like talking in interviews with them and stuff, and they said, yeah, you don't want to talk about it much because you can be a figure of ridicule. Then it cuts to me on late night making fun of people and I'm like, oh no, I'm a dick. I was like, oh God, it was horrible.
Oh God. Well, at least is any press bad press? I don't know.
No, there's plenty of bad press. You can get plenty of bad press.
Oh God.
Especially now. I think now it's mostly bad press.
Oh man. Well, so circling back to aviation.
Okay.
And some of the things your approach to aviation really early on impressed me. You said something in an interview one time about showbiz. You do whatever they tell you to do, and it doesn't really matter. In aviation, if you do the wrong things, it'll kill you.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm paraphrasing, but what you're really saying was humility keeps you safe.
Well, I think that, I think one of the things that I like and respect about aviators is the fact that that, you tell lies, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about telling lies at a cruise, but you can't. I mean, my whole career, I've been lying about my ability, right? So if, like, when I was a kid, if someone says, "Now this is a part in this movie, it requires you to be able to ride a horse. Can you ride a horse?" I'd be like, "Absolutely, I can ride a horse." No fucking way, I know what it is. Do you know how to drive a Lamborghini? Yes. thinking I'll pick it up on the way. But with aviation, if someone says, "Do you know how to do this?" and you say yes, and you don't know how to do it, you'll kill everybody.
Yeah.
So you have to say, "No, I don't know how to do that, and I need to learn."
Yeah.
And what I also loved about it is, like, I had this raging OCD stuff before I learned to fly. I mean, I can still get it, but I used to, I had to wear my lucky underpants on the airplane. It was very important that I wore lucky underpants on the airplane. And this pair of underpants.
Was it a brand or a specific
no,
pair
it
of
was
underpants?
one specific pair. Okay. And I had to clean them in the sink every time. And I was like, they were falling apart.
It was kind of tough when you do those 10-day tours. Craig.
Yeah, it's bad. So you get in there, shampoo from the shower, wash them in the sink. And so I was always like that. And then in flight training, I read The Pilot's Guide to Aeronautical Knowledge, one of the greatest books ever written. I love that book. That and a book called Aviation.
I think you're one of the only people that feels that particular way about that book.
I love that book. There's freedom in that book.
Yeah.
Because there is nothing in that book about lucky underpants. At no point do they say, and make sure you've got your lucky underpants. Nothing.
So it wasn't the lucky underpants?
It was not the underpants. And you go, wait, so the underpants are not involved? It's nothing to do with underpants.
Really?
Yeah, and there is such freedom in that. It's like, that's why I think, aviation, the stakes are pretty high. The rules are pretty obvious, but the stakes are pretty high, Mm-hmm. Like, if you make a mistake in a boat, you've got some time.
Yeah. Just sits there, just floats, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully, right.
Well, one of the things when you have, you're a very well-known celebrity, you have all this stuff going on, you've had late night TV shows, you've been in movies, you have this amazing podcast, a Joy podcast, which I absolutely love. I listened to 2 episodes on the way down here, but humility is typically hard to come by in a person in your position. And I think you've really done a great job at exercising that as it relates to aviation. And I think a lot of pilots can take that kind of stuff away as well.
I think that, first of all, I love the idea that you think I have it. I think I try not to be a dick, which I think that's in there somewhere. But I think show business is kind of like the internet. It's only dangerous if you take it seriously. Mm. Aviation is only dangerous if you don't take it seriously.
Oh, God.
So it's the opposite. It's the opposite. You got to take it seriously. There's plenty of fun, and there's plenty of adventure. And this is another thing I love about aviation as well. You can have amazing adventures and be sitting down.
Yeah.
You don't have to run around and all that. You can be sitting down, having a snack, and also
get a coffee.
Yeah, you get a coffee and still be having an adventure.
There was a moment in time that it really, I was excuse me, I was actually worried about you a little bit when you were shooting. I think you were shooting How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah.
Your late night. You had your talk show. I think you had just started another TV show, maybe a Celebrity Name Game.
Oh, yeah.
Like you were doing all this stuff.
Yeah,
and
I was working.
You had these crazy demands.
Yeah.
But you were touring as well.
Yeah, it was nuts. And I remember, I don't know what happened. I kind of, I took my hand off the yoke. It was crazy. It was nuts.
And I was with you. We were flying you back and forth. I think you booked like a whole week at MGM Grand in Vegas.
Oh, you remember that?
And we were...
Helicopter from CBS to Van Nuys, and then flying up to Vegas, and then flying back, and it was
it was wild.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And I bring that up because I don't think people understand the level of logistics that go into being being an entertainer, and the demand, the pressure and the demand that you guys have.
Yeah, but you volunteer for it though. Look, it's not being. I'm not an ER doctor or a nurse or someone working in a school in the inner city. It's like no one says if you don't do this residency in Vegas, then you don't eat. It's like you do it because I think what happened is that I don't like saying this about myself, but I think the truth is that the living like that is kind of greedy. It's like you want to do all the things, and I kind of I kind of don't want to do all the things anymore. I'm older now as well, so I'm tired. But I think then I was like, I felt like I had to. Show business is also very mercurial and it's very capricious, and you don't know if you're going to be working ever again. So you think, well, I got to make as much money as I can right now. Yeah. And then, and I've made a little money now, so I'm like, So as long as I don't own an airplane, I'm probably okay for money.
Let's go find you a PC-12.
No.
Come on.
That much I've learned. Is like, what is that thing Richard Branson says? You want how you to be a millionaire in aviation? Start with $1 billion. Yeah.
I think Richard Branson's done okay in aviation.
I think he's probably doing all right.
He's doing okay. I mean, with the whole space thing, I don't know about that. We'll see.
That's not aviation. That's space. That's different.
Oh, God. There was, speaking of the touring, I remember we were touring. It was another Wisconsin flight.
Right.
And you were on a long tour, but you had backup plans. You had buses and buses.
I remember this. This was great.
Oh God, one of your guys. I thought he was going to kill me.
Yeah,
he was very upset with
Jeff.
me.
Jeff.
Yes.
He was very frightened of flying, and we used to make him fly all the time. And and I tried to help him. He would not hear me. He would not listen. He would not learn about it. He wouldn't do the soar thing. He was just like, he wouldn't do it. And I remember we were going from Milwaukee to Minneapolis. It's like an hour flight. It's nothing. Mm-hmm. And I got up that morning because the bus was going. So there was a ton of merchandise going as well, and there was all sorts of other stuff. So the bus was going that day as well. And it's an 8-hour bus drive. Yeah. But I remember I got up in the morning and I looked at the weather. I went on the aviation. I looked at the weather, and it was a line of thunderstorms. And there were like Mexico to Canada, and there was just like, and there was no way around it. And they were going to be there all day. And I was like, no fucking way. That's a no fly for me. No way. And that tiny little jet through that, going.
I know.
So I got on the bus at 7 a.m. because I knew the bus was leaving, and there was a bed in the back. I just went to sleep.
I know.
Over to you because you took the flight.
Exactly. You called me and you're like, hey, how's the weather? I don't know if you remember this. You called me and you're like, how's the weather? I think you were testing me. I'm like, it'll be okay. You're like, fuck you. I'm taking the bus. You liar.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. So I remember Jeff gets there, the whole crew, you had your opener and Jeff was part of the show. And I think there was another guy. And they get there and Jeff's like, and he's this big kind of macho, big guy, big dude. And he's like, where the fuck's Craig? I'm like, he took the bus. He's like, that motherfucker. Why didn't he call me? I'm like, I don't know.
There were dragons in the sky. There was like,
and you're so fucking smart, man. That flight we got nailed by lightning on that flight.
Did you have an electrical out and stuff?
We took our radar out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, it was a definitely.
I remember when they landed.
A good call.
He was like. Because I remember the bus pulled just as you were landing. The bus was just getting in. I said, "We'll pick him up at the airport."
Yeah.
And you guys come in and you get your like arrows in your hats and all that kind of stuff. You're like, "Oh my God."
Well, I will say, if Jeff didn't need me at that moment in time in the airplane, he would have killed me.
Yeah.
But he needed me to land the airplane. So
yeah, I mean, he was pretty mad at me. I was like, "Look, man, just." And so from that moment on, whenever we were traveling, he'd call me in the morning. He would say, "You taking the bus?" I'm like, "No, I'm taking the bus." He'd and so he would take the plane if I was taking the plane.
Oh my God, dude, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty.
There was so many stories of that. Was just.
But I kind of love that. That it's what you don't get when you fly with the airlines is. Flying with airlines is great. If it works, there's nothing to beat it. But you it gets a little routine, which is good. It's good that it's routine, but it lacks a certain adventure. I don't want adventure in the airlines, but if you know what I mean.
No, you don't. No. You don't want it. You were having, when during that time, I actually read your book recently, your most recent book,
Riding the Elephant.
Riding the Elephant, and fantastic book, by the way.
Thank you very much.
I really enjoyed it. I've read all your books, but that was recently, and you wrote in there about a time that it's very public. Your journey with sobriety and all that stuff for 30 plus years, and at that moment in time, you were struggling with that was a hard moment in time for you.
Mm-hmm, it was.
And I don't I was going through this really bad moment in my life as well. And it was really interesting because we were doing this like crazy schedule. I was flying, you were like, we were doing this for days and days and touring, and I had no idea what was going on with you.
I think because we both ran to the same place, which is if everything else is crazy, you know, the checklist is the checklist, the flight is the flight, the given altitude is the given altitude, the engine readout is the engine readout. All of the rules of aviation they're not changing. None of that's changing. It's not changing whether you feel good or you feel bad. It's not changing whether, it's like the rules are the rules. And I feel like that for me, because I learned to fly during all that time, and I found it reassuring that there was a science that was totally ambivalent to how I felt. And and also it would keep you busy. It's somehow the busyness is when life is difficult, I find busyness kind of comforting. Yeah. And distracting, I guess, as well. And distracting in a real way. I mean, it's not like I'm distracting myself with Instagram. That's not real.
Right.
But if you're distracting yourself with, a kind of, for want of a better phrase, a high stakes situation, that, you gotta pay attention here.
Yeah.
And it kind of takes you out of it a little bit. I'm very appreciative of that time for that.
Yeah.
Because I found it helpful.
Yeah. Like, for me, it was, and I really appreciated you. Not, you kept me in business for one, but I had lost my daughter at that time in my life
remember,
as well.
Yeah, that was a terrible time for you. Yeah.
It was a horrible time, and the flying, the focus, the comedy, to be totally
and
honest,
also the laughs. That was that.
Yeah.
I mean, we were a band of brothers in that shitty little jet flies everywhere. It's like, oh my God. I mean, there were times, and then you got me into buying airplanes, and then that's when I lost all the money and had to go back to work.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
Jason, we got a tour again.
Yeah, the wheel just went on the Citation, the 10. I loved that airplane.
It was a good airplane.
That was a great.
I still think it's one of the most beautiful airplanes ever made.
I couldn't agree more. It's a great one, and actually, the truth is, if I am going to buy another airplane, I'd get a 10 again.
Yeah?
Yeah, because the 10 was, I mean, they're noisy and cold a little bit because they're Cessnas. And if they're not noisy and cold, it wouldn't be a Cessna, right?
And it's the fastest airplane in the world.
Well, is it still?
Well,
I think these 550s and stuff will be faster.
The 650s, they're apparently a little faster.
But it's got the swept back wing, so it looks like, it's like a dart.
Yeah, and a huge engine, massive engine.
Oh, these big engines in the back. And just,
God, I love it.
I remember, I was talking to someone, it may have been Jeff actually, he was talking about, you're making money, you should get a Rolls Royce. And I said, I got two.
Exactly, they're strapped to
the side of my fucking plane.
Exactly.
And boy, are they expensive. But the Citation I used to love, because we used to take it over to Scotland. Yeah. You'd fly Van Nuys to Fargo to Bangor, Maine, and you had to wait for the wind to over to Scotland, and then back the same way.
Yeah.
I used to. Megan describes it as like, eep, eep, eep.
Oh God, I love Megan. She's got the best sense of humor.
She sends her love, by the way.
Well, and I'm going to send her a thank you letter right after this, because I think she's the reason you're here right now.
She's the reason I'm on Earth right now, I think. Yeah.
So I just have a couple more aviation things I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
There's two things. One, probably my most frustrating moment with you in aviation was, I'm sitting on my couch at home, and it's probably 9-10 o'clock at night, and you had to be on the David Letterman show for an interview.
Day.
You're going to be on David Letterman show, right? You got to be in New York.
Yeah.
And you're sitting in
I was in LAX.
You're in the airplane. They're having a mechanical delay.
Yeah.
And you call me and you're like, hey, I need you to come pick me up.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm not going to come pick you up. You're like, I'm on this American Airlines. I think it was American Airlines.
I can't remember.
You're like, I'm on this airline.
It's a red eye in New York.
And he's like, something's wrong with the airplane. I don't trust it. I'm like, Craig, it's fine. It's an airline. Everything's going to be fine. Just go. And 15 minutes later, you're like, I got off the airplane. Come pick me up. I'm just like, fuck. Fuck.
Yeah, I remember. I'm sorry about that.
Oh,
That was
God.
but you
And
did.
We did. We got it done. So as an aviator, and I mentioned in the intro that you're one of the only guests we've had on the show, or we will ever have on the show, that's actually flown a Dragon.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know the type of Dragon that you flew and how to train your Dragon?
No.
You don't?
No,
So,
I just get in and go through the checklist and go.
Well, thank God for kids, because
Yeah.
when I was telling my kids that I was going to have you on the show, my youngest is like immediately jumped into this, right, and got on the internet and starts looking. So he found out that the hot Burple is the Dragon that you flew and how to train your. It's a hot Burple.
A hot Burple.
Its name was Grump, which is suiting.
Right, I remember its name was Grump.
And it has a basic empty weight of 5,724 pounds.
I think you're thinking about that shitty Citation jet we used to
No,
fly
no,
with,
this is
which
good.
was also a hot Burple.
This is good. Yes. No, this is great. The hot Burple had a takeoff weight of 5,000, or basic empty weight of 5,724, a length of 24 feet 6 inches, and a wingspan of 42 7 inches. Okay. 42 feet 7 inches, which is almost the same specs as the CJ2.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
I love that. I love it. I think the hot Burple. Then, if I'd have known that, I'd have called the plane the hot Burple.
That would have been the name of my company instead of Silver Air. It would have been
Silver
Hot Burple.
Air is a pretty decent name for an airline. You know, hot Burple is not like let's get hot Burple. I don't think so. We got to get there right away. Let's get hot Burple. No.
Let's get hot Burple on it.
No.
Damn. I think the marketing guys could have had some.
No, I don't think so.
It was good. Well, Craig, I really appreciate you coming on the show, man.
It's a pleasure, man.
I've had so many aviation adventures with you, and when I think back of all the fun times I've had in an airplane, you've been there a lot of the time. And
yeah. I mean, it's fun. It's fun.
We've had so
I
much
mean,
fun.
I miss that kind of thing. I don't do it as much, and I think I'm going to get back to it and do it a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's because. My God, what a feeling sometimes, you know, and every now and again you sit in these airports and then you see something amazing fly in. Do you know what I mean? And it's like these little I saw that big Russian cargo thing land.
Oh, yeah. The Antonov.
Yeah, I saw it in up in what's that where you land in Canada? It's not Gander, the other one, Goose Bay.
Goose Bay, yeah.
Yeah, I saw it land there. And
oh, yeah.
It was like crazy.
It was just massive. It's no longer.
Yeah, they don't use it anymore?
No, it got it's a Ukrainian airplane, actually.
That
was bombed.
Probably
unfortunately, yeah,
would be a problem.
It was a sad day for that.
Yeah.
That was a one-off airplane.
Did you see of course you did. You see the new Top Gun thing?
Oh yeah.
I was like,
I love it.
Jesus, this is the best movie ever made.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's the best movie ever made.
What's interesting, the Top Gun effect, and the first Top Gun came out, there was this massive surge of pilots.
Right.
And no one ever really no one really even brought it up, but the data is out now. All these people went into flight training. Well, we've been in this massive deficit of pilots today, but now there's all these students. As soon as the Top Gun movie came out, massive students in flight training now.
Oh, right.
So I think thank you, Tom Cruise.
Well, yeah, here's the thing though. He also saved the movie business, but he's a pretty intense aviator as well, man.
He is.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty impressive what he does.
I met his chief pilot recently.
Yeah?
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah. I don't imagine, Tom doesn't need to have assholes around him.
No, I don't think so.
Guy's an asshole. Really? Poor guy. Let's get somebody else.
There's plenty of G550 pilots out there. Well, I hope we get a chance to fly again soon, Craig.
Oh, wait, no doubt.
I have so much fun flying with you, and you do it right, and I've learned a lot from you over the years, and thank you for being such a good friend, and appreciate you. Thank you very much, Craig, for being on Flight Club.